Thank you for tuning into Proudly in Conversation, the podcast celebrating LGBTQ plus voices. I'm your host, Simon Blake, and today I'm really excited to welcome Jingle Johnson to the sofa. We'll be talking about some of the topics that come up often across our community, including identity, belonging, mental health, and how inclusive our spaces really are. They can be sensitive conversations, but they are a very important one, and this podcast is all about creating space to explore them openly. You might know Ginger as the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race UK and the winner of Celebrity MasterChef, and a performer who came up through the vibrant drag and cabaret scene in East London. Through her work, Ginger uses drag not just for entertainment, but to explore deeper themes, from mental health to community and belonging, all with humour and fabulous performances. Ginger, welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I'd love just to start by you telling people a bit about you, who you are, and how you got to where you are now.
That's a very long story, and I'm not very good at shortening things, but I'll do my very best. I am a drag performer. I am a writer and theatre maker and actor and all-round lunatic. And I'm not really sure how I've quite ended up where I am, to be honest. It all really just snowballed from the very smallest thing back when I first started doing drag when I was 18, 19 years old. I started doing it kind of by accident. I was studying a degree in script writing, and we had to do, as part of one of those modules, we had to do a radio play that was a monologue. And I wrote this monologue based on the women that I grew up around in the Northeast. It was kind of a character piece. And you had to record the monologue in order to get marked on that module. So I didn't know any actresses. I didn't have any money to pay anyone to do it. So I decided to do it myself. So that was just the voice and the character to begin with. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I got asked to do it live. And then from there, I got asked to do other performances. And I just got completely distracted by the world of drag along the way. In the first place, I really wanted to be a Shakespearean actor. I wanted to be a very serious actor in very serious plays, but unfortunately, I could not take myself seriously enough to do it. So this is where I've ended up instead, and I'm very, very grateful for it, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, drag's been such an important part of queer history. I remember the heady days of coming out and going to Sunday night drag shows, and it was such good fun. But I'd be really interested in just when you say it snowballed from there. What was it that attracted you away from Shakespeare into drag? Where did you start, and what was it that kept you going?
I think it really started for me in earnest when I moved to London, and I came here because of drag. I had come to be part of a show that was made by a performance artist called Scotty. And I had been a contestant in this kind of talent show that Scotty was doing. And I'd made all my own costumes for that thing. And Scotty had asked me after the show, well, as I was leaving to get back on the megabus to Newcastle, where I lived at the time, Scotty said, who does your clothes? And I said, I make them myself. And in that moment, Scotty said to me, if you move to London, I will pay you a little bit of money every week to make me a new outfit every week. And 4 days later, I packed up my entire flat in Newcastle, which was very little stuff, to be honest. And I got back on the megabus and I came back to London. And that was my first real into the scene. Scotty took me under their wing, and I made lots of friends there, and I started to work on the cabaret scene, and then into the sort of live art crossover cabaret stuff, really strange, esoteric, absurd performance stuff at places like the RVT and that kind of thing. And then that sort of led into me becoming part of Sink the Pink, which was a huge queer clubbing beer moth, an iconic night that ran for over 10 years. Yeah. And I became the host of Sink the Pink and traveled all over the country and the world with them. And then after that, Sink the Pink sort of wound down a little bit. And I went back to the theatre. My first theatre show that I made in London was actually produced by Sink the Pink. They wanted to do a pantomime for Christmas, and they asked me to write it and direct it. And I created this very, very strange sort of Grand Guignol Victorian melodrama inspired show about the Krampus, which is this sort of beast in German theology, in German mythology, that steals children at Christmas. And that kind of got me back to the theatre. And since then, I've spent most of my career after that making theatre shows that are based in queer stories and queer realities.
Yeah. I met my husband at the RVT, but that's a whole different conversation.
I would love to know the number of people that have met their husbands at the RVT over the year. That's such a special, special place. And people still go there and meet their husband every night of the week, I'm certain of it.
No, absolutely. So you talk about the scene, and I'm guessing this is about 20 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, maybe a bit less.
Coming up for it, 17, 18 years ago. Yeah.
What did the scene feel like then? You talked about community, and one of the themes which sort of keeps coming up, both on podcast but also outside, is about the importance of community and unity and connecting and standing together. So what was community like then?
It was so exciting to come to London and be surrounded by so many different types of queer people. You know, in Newcastle where I was, there was a really active scene there. I would say it was more of a gay scene than a queer scene. You know, there was a stretch of bars and they did shows and club nights like towns all around the country and around the world do. But I knew there was something terribly weird about me. And that itch wasn't getting scratched in Newcastle. And when I came to London and I was introduced to such a wide variety of people and the different variations on the art form and the venues and the audiences and all of those opportunities, it really, really changed my life. You know, one of the first drag performances I saw in London was David Hoyle, again at the RVT. And up until then, my experience of live drag was honestly quite limited.
Yeah.
And I'd been making costumes for a show that was at the Oval Theatre that used to be just down the road from the RVT.
Yeah.
And we went there after opening night. The director of the show invited me to go with everybody and see this show by a person called David Hoyle, who I'd never heard of. And standing in that pit at the RVT and just basking in the sheer queer anarchy of David Hoyle absolutely changed my life. You know, I watched David and I thought, if this is what drag can be, if David Hoyle is one end of a spectrum of what drag can be, then I belong somewhere on that spectrum. And that really set me off on the journey from that moment.
Yeah. So two things probably. For those people who don't know David Hoyle, could you say a bit about them so they're not sitting and listening and thinking, who's it? And also really interesting because language, of course, plays such a defining part in the way that we understand you know, who we are and community now. And you defined the difference between a gay scene and a queer scene. So just be a quick bit about David Hoyle and how we can put some links in the show notes. But also when you say gay scene versus queer scene, love to just know a bit more about that.
Okay. Well, David Hoyle is a legendary anarchist, agitator, live artist, drag performer. First came to big public knowledge. He had a series on Channel 4 all the way back in the day of him, in one instance, hanging sausages on a Christmas tree. He's very esoteric and political and aggressive and so exciting to see. That stuff has now recently, David has done a whole series with Mugler, calling back to that stuff that he originally did with Channel 4, which is just phenomenal. But David's had an amazing career as an artist and an advocate for queer people, and has a really acerbic, confrontational style, which was something I had never experienced before. So that's my potted history of David Hoyle. I'm sorry if I didn't do you justice, David. I love you. I urge everybody out there to go discover David Hoyle if you don't know who he is. So yes, Newcastle, when I say at the time, and we're talking like early 2000s, when I say it was more of a gay scene than a queer scene, I guess what I mean is that it was predominantly catered towards and populated by gay and lesbian people. And when I came to London, my understanding of myself was that I was a gay man. And it wasn't until my mind was opened up to all of the other amazing identities that exist within our community that I realized it wasn't quite as cut and dry like that for me. And that I started to identify more with the label of being queer, because I think queerness is not something that relies only on sexuality. For me, queerness is an understanding that the world is built for heterosexual people. The systems that are in place and the way that the world at large functions has heterosexual people as their primary customer. And queerness is accepting that you are not that primary customer, but you deserve to be catered to just the same. And that wasn't a concept that I got into, I was aware of or understood until I came to London and met such a broad range of people here.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Is that good? I don't know.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I guess that one of the things that I've been really interested in since I started Stonewall almost 18 months ago, I've always identified as a gay man. And one of the things which, of course, over time, queer, for people of my age in their 50s was often, a term that might also be associated with assault, and bullying and hurt. So for some people, it carries all sorts of trauma. But in the context that you're talking about, it's about liberation. And so I guess that's why I wanted to just explore that a bit. I think it's so important that we ensure that we can all describe ourselves how we want to and claim things as we want to. And drag has been at the heart of some of that for a really, really long time. I'd be really interested in just understanding a bit about your sense about what drag has contributed to, understanding, to challenging those norms, to challenging the world, because there will be critics of drag who will say, all sorts of things which we don't need to rehearse now, but just, what's your sense about the contribution it makes to queer history, to queer life and to queer futures? We can describe it like that.
First of all, drag is for absolutely everybody, whether that is as an audience member or a critic or a performer or someone who just loves and appreciates the idea of it. Drag is so open to absolutely everybody. And it's such a powerful and dangerous thing. And I say dangerous as a positive thing. Because what drag does is it acknowledges that everybody, every single human being is pretending at all times. The image that you put of yourself out into the world, the way that you interact with people, the journeys that you take yourself on in life, we are all making it up as we go along. That's irrefutable. What drag does is really throw a spotlight onto that and let everybody off the hook for a moment. I think about that phrase all the time, letting people off the hook, because I think that is the real power of drag. It says, if we acknowledge that we are all making it up as we go along, then perhaps there is space within that to forgive each other when it's not quite right, or forgive ourselves when we're not quite landing the way that we want to land. And that is the real liberation of drag, or that was for me. And that is what I try to do through my work and performance and art. I'm not sure I'm always successful in doing it, but that's the message, that's the flag that I am flying when I put myself into drag.
And can you think of, is there a moment where you thought, I've nailed it, or when you had a particularly good moment, perhaps in your earlier days or more recently, where you've gone, that's how I wanted it to feel?
Oh, that's tricky, because those moments happen multiple times a day. And sometimes they're really, really great. And sometimes they're really, really bad. Because drag recognizes that artifice, because in the first instance, it is all about the artifice. It leaves space for forgiveness of those things. I'm trying to think, is there a time when I think I've really nailed that? I'm not sure. I think it certainly in my collaborative theatre shows that I make with a group of queer people, and we all devise together. I've made a number of those over the years. They have felt incredibly powerful in the moment, because that is a coming together of a group of artists with one goal. And the most amazing things can come out of that. A community of artists working together. They feel like some of the most fulfilling moments, and the moments where you're really landing it, because as you said before, community across any time you talk about queer people, community is the thing that's at the heart of it. So anytime that you can bring the art and community together, you're winning the fight.
Such a powerful thing, isn't it? That sense of unity and bringing people together. Can I just go back to the word dangerous? Because
Yes.
I love it when people use words which might have different meaning for other people. So when you say dangerous as a really positive thing, just tell us a bit more about what that means.
Dangerous because it... Let me think carefully about how I describe this. I think drag is dangerous because it forces us to ask questions and it bursts the bubble of artifice and it pulls back the wizard's curtain. You know, it says that everything around us is a construction. And many of the systems that ultimately oppress us, not just queer people, but all people, when you pull back that curtain, those things start to crumble away. And that is where liberation lies for anybody, wherever you are, whoever you are. If you can see past the thing that we're all pretending is holding us all together, then it frees you up to feel good about yourself and your friends and your life and the world around you. And there's nothing more powerful than that. And that is dangerous for the people that want to oppress us because we are freed from them by that. And
it just, in that description, you just demonstrate the political nature of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's for those who believe that liberation is important. It's incredibly powerful. And for those who want to maintain the status quo, there becomes a danger in there.
One of my great mentors in my life and my career is a drag queen called Lavinia Co-op, who is in her 70s now, I think. I met her 10 years ago, maybe, and we've done quite a lot of work together. We've made shows together and I performed with her lots of times. And she really opened my mind up to the idea of queer liberation. And it has become such a powerful driving force in my life on and off stage, seeking liberation, trying to find moments of freedom within life. Has really been inspired by her. And, she knows a thing or two about liberation. She was there with the Gay Liberation Front at the beginning. She was one of the founding members of the Blue Lips, who were an amazing alt-drag troupe that changed the face of drag in the UK and around the world. So she's a huge inspiration for me and really turned me on to the idea of queer liberation and trying to engage in that as a practice as much as possible.
And how powerful the idea of a 70-year-old, you're in your 30s, there will be younger generations. And I guess one of the things which I'm really interested in when we think about community, about people coming together, about people experiencing, I remember going into clubs and seeing all these things that I'd never, Cornish boy, had not seen much when I arrived in Cardiff. And now as nightclubs close, as venues are closing, as that sense of the scene perhaps is different. I guess I'm interested in how you see the contribution of drag continuing. I mean, it's obviously now on mainstream TV, which a bit about. So just interesting thoughts you have about that.
I mean, it's difficult. The closure of venues, sadly, is a story that has been told since I first made my way into the queer world. We've been talking about venues closing. And it is true, and it becomes harder and harder and harder for venues to stay afloat. And people theorize different reasons as to why that is. People don't go to bars to meet each other maybe as much as they did before because there are other ways to do it. You can find people in your phone to go and meet. Also, I think there is a younger generation of LGBTQIA plus people that maybe don't engage in drinking as much as people have in the past, which makes those venues less appealing to them. I think with drag, drag is like a really fabulous fungus. It will find a way. People will find a way to show off. There are people out there with cupboards full of wigs and they want people to clap and laugh at their jokes, and they will find a place to do it. And whether that is in a cafe or at a brunch or in a museum or on the street or on TikTok, drag will find a way to persist. So I'm confident in that. And I choose to take a positive frame of mind towards that. Also, there is some good news on the venue front as well. The Black Cap is about to reopen.
Yep.
I was very lucky to get the very end of the Black Cap era just before it closed. And I watch videos of the real back in the day Black Cap era on the internet all of the time. And I'm so excited that that venue is on its way back.
Yep.
I don't know much about the landscape of venues around the UK, although I travel around a lot. I don't get to spend a lot of time doing that because I'm normally on tour. But I know that in London, there are some brilliant, thriving venues that are really diversifying and working hard to make themselves appealing and interesting and exciting for the community. Places like the Divine, that is now open in the daytime, where you can go and have coffee and work there and meet people that way as well. So I choose to take a positive outlook on it, partly because my industry relies on it, but also because my community relies on it. And that's where I'm at with that. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for the people that are at the hard end of the budget line of trying to keep venues open. I know that the Queer Co-op in Cardiff has just announced that they're going to have to close, which is so sad. That was an amazing, really brilliant place. Yeah. But, they are the realities of the high street and of the bar scene in general at the moment.
Drag is a fabulous fungus, I think. Yeah, it would have been one of those brilliant Twitter when you only had 140 characters. It would have been a great way to.
Sometimes I feel like when I'm on stage, what I'm doing is releasing spores.
One of the things which I think is always interesting is about which bits of you take into your drag persona and which bits of you are you now as you sit with me and you talked about growing up as a gay man in a gay life and then finding this queer scene. Can you just talk a bit about that?
I think in the first place, Ginger was a very separate character to me. She was a character that I was playing. We were completely discrete personalities from each other. And I thought of her like that. And I wanted my audience to think of her like that as well. The reality is, having now played the character of Ginger for 15, 16, 17 years, something I try not to count. I've drunk quite a few bottles of wine in that time. I don't know the numbers. We have gotten closer and closer and closer and closer together. And truly, I think that if you were to make a graph of that, it would match up to the graph of me discovering and accepting myself and my queer identity. Okay. I think I was maybe using Ginger as a baffle of some kind in the beginning. And now I am more at peace with myself. And I have in part dealt with some of the shame that I grew up with as being a queer person in a rural area with not a lot of people in the queer scene to look up to around me or even in the media. I think as I've sort of closed the door on some of that in my life, Ginger and I are very, very close to each other. She's a bit more personable than me. I think she's a much better time than I am. I am quite a quiet, shy person. I know that might be quite hard to believe, but I like to be at home with my partner and my cats and have a quiet night in and watch The Traitors. That's my life. She likes to get out there a little bit more, you know. But no, I think we're very similar now, and it's partly also because I try as much as I can in my shows to use Ginger as a way to access an audience that maybe wouldn't particularly be interested in listening to me as myself, you know. Yeah. She's a little bit of a Trojan horse, especially with my solo shows, which tend to have an undercurrent of something a little bit more serious underneath all of the laughs and everything else that goes on around it. Yeah. So, but no, I think I used to think of, I have a really clear picture of a certain time of my life in drag where I would be at a gig, I'd get into full drag, and the relationship was almost like I was the manager and she was the talent. And I would curse myself for putting myself in this situation. And then in turn, the manager in me would curse her for being like, come on, this is what we want to do. This is the moment. This is the thing that you dream of doing. And I think maybe the manager and performer sides of my psyche have learned to be a bit more gentle with each other now.
How interesting. And did you know any of that? I mean, is that hindsight? Is that rear view looking?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And obviously, performance can be a really important part of healing, discovery. You said putting to bed some of the shame. I guess I would be really interested in just, if you were to talk to that younger lad now, and from the position that you are in, what would you be saying to your younger self?
There are so many wigs in your future. I think that would be a good guiding moment. But I think really I would love to say to him, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle. I think in that like flurry of youth and ambition and excitement that a lot of people go through, especially in your late teens and early 20s, we can be really, really hard on ourselves. And we can mirror the way that the society treats us. Yeah. And unfortunately, it does just take time and experience and therapy to get to the point where you can handle yourself a little bit more gently.
Yeah.
And then I think I would say, in the moments where you can't be gentle, forgive yourself for not being able to be gentle in the moment, because it's hard. Even now I find that hard sometimes to, when I know that I'm giving myself a hard time, it's hard in the moment to step out of that and say, you're trying your best. Yeah. And that's all you can do.
Yeah. I always remember somebody saying to me, nobody else is that interested in you.
Yes. I also had a great bit of advice from a very close friend of mine years and years and years ago, and I think about this all the time. Nobody cares if you don't go to the party. Nobody cares if you don't go to the party. And that's not to say that nobody cares about you and wouldn't love to see you at the party, but nobody sits at the party going, oh, I can't believe Ginger Johnson isn't here. I'm furious with her. And that's a piece of advice I wish I'd had a long time ago, because I may have spent a little bit too long at the party.
Yeah, completely agree. The advice I had wasn't given in a horrible way. It was just know that nobody is thinking about it because they're too busy thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
So that's the advice you give to your younger self. If you were to have any nuance on that into younger people who are growing up now in a world which arguably is more omnipresent from a digital platform and all of those things, is there anything you would add, if you were thinking about you growing up now rather than 25 years ago?
I'm right on the sort of millennial cusp with all of that stuff.
Show off.
Thank you. I try as hard as I can to engage with the internet. It's a big part of my industry. I'm not very good at it. And as much as I am grateful to have grown up in a time where there is no record of my childhood, my teens, my late teens, and my early 20s, apart from some really terrible digital photographs that were taken in the dark and no one can see me in there. I'm not constantly confronted by my own existence from that time. Yeah. And I can't imagine what that must feel like for younger people. And I would say to those younger people, in the best way that you can, try and connect with the older generation and help us to understand what that is like and how we can support you in that. Because I think it's easy to either play it down or just say, oh yeah, that must be awful. But these young people need our support to get through that. And but we need a bit of information from them along the way about what that feels like and what the pressures are that they're under, and how their community, which does in a way feel quite separate from my community. We were saying just before we started the chat, I am now sort of in a category of being an older queer person, which is ridiculous because in my head I'm 19, you know, nothing has changed. I'm still confused and, you know, don't really understand anything about the world. But we can't hope to help those younger people at all until we really understand what's going on there. So I would love them to be able to try to communicate that to us and to the people that are of my generation of queer people. We've got to open our ears and listen to them because there is a crisis on its way through our community that we are kind of blind to because I think we don't really understand it at the moment.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? I remember being a student and being on the scene and someone I'm still in touch with now, who now, of course, is only a couple of years older than me, at the time felt light years older than me, and somebody who was 40, that was, and there seemed to be a more natural intergenerational mingling, that passing on of knowledge and understanding. You said about when you first came to London, being taken under, I think, Scotty's wing. And how important that is. So that, if one thing I'm certainly taking from this again is, that importance of passing on learning, ensuring that people really are standing on the shoulders of those of us who've gone before and done, muddled through in whatever way.
Yes. And us accepting that maybe we didn't make the best job of it the first time round is a big part of that. That's maybe part of the divide. That we think we've got it sorted and they think they've got it sorted and there is a gap in between. And we all just need to admit that none of us have it sorted.
No, absolutely. I'm sure that I was, as an adult, I was going to be sorted. It was an adult 20, adult 30, adult 40, adult 50, maybe by 60. So just thinking about, for those people, I guess, who just to jump back a bit, who don't understand the contribution or are not open to the contribution that drag might play, what would you say to them? So but sometimes our own internalized homophobia or fears about ourselves can prevent us to be open to new experiences and to thinking about how drag might help us to understand ourselves. What would you?
That is the question of a career. That's the question I'm asking myself all of the time. I think one of the powerful things about drag is I like to think, this is a weird take, all right, that I've not said out loud before. I think drag queens and AI, generative AI, are actually doing the same job. Okay. Because what drag queens do, or I shouldn't just say drag queens because there are a myriad of different types of drag performers. Sure. I say queens because that's my own experience. But what drag performers do is they consume the world around them, the culture around them, the news, current events, anything, music, film, television, and they take it in and they jumble it around and make it their own and put it back out into the world and put a magnifying glass on particular things that they think are interesting or exciting or need to be looked at a bit further. And even the most straightforward drag performance, there is something inherently subversive about it. And we need subversion in our community. We need it across all communities. But the fact that queer people are able to do it in a form that is entertaining and funny and accessible and available to everybody, like in performance venues or online or anywhere else, that's a really special thing that we have. Drag queens also, or drag performers again, we're some of the most visible queer people you can see in the culture because of what we do, because of the image that we are creating. It's a big part of our art form. And for that reason, we have a number of really important jobs within the community. You will often find that any big fundraising or charitable moment, there will be a crew of drag queens in, around, and behind that thing. We are community leaders in that way. We are also able to start conversations about things with people that are maybe difficult to approach or feel like something that is maybe uninteresting or or a bit spiky to think and talk about, but we use the art form to open those conversations up in a way that is fun and accessible. And I think that's an important role that we play as well.
Yeah.
And we also stand to remind everybody not to take themselves too seriously. That's the big key.
Yeah. It made complete sense. When you first said about drag and AI, I was thinking, where's this going to go? But it makes such complete sense.
You know what I mean? We scoop it all in and then we pretend it's our own thing and then we spit it back out.
Yeah. No, absolutely brilliant. I guess it would be unfair to let you go without just explaining a bit about you moved from drag queens to drag performers, and given that drag queens are often the most visible, can you just say a couple of sentences for people who are not aware about the sort of spectrum of drag performance?
Oh, wow. Well, anything can be drag if you want it to be. You know, I'm in the Marcel Duchamp camp. You know, if you put the urinal in the gallery and it becomes art. You put somebody in drag and it becomes drag. You get drag kings, you get drag things, people that don't even identify as a human being when they're in drag. You get people who are animal characters or monster characters. There's a whole end of monster drag that is horror inspired. So anything can be drag. And one of my favorite games to play is to walk along the street with friends and point at things and say, that is drag. And that might be a hanging basket, or it might be a window display, or it might be somebody going along with their headphones in, just lip syncing, enjoying their life. That is drag. So drag exists everywhere, all around us.
Brilliant. So very quick shift into a final question, actually.
Yeah.
A book, a podcast, a film, what would you have on your list that you would recommend to people, either about drag or just one that you think is brilliant around?
It's so hard to choose one. Can I choose a couple of things?
You can say as many things as you want because I won't interrupt you.
All right, fab. I love the Homo Sapiens podcast. Really, really, really brilliant. Some fabulous conversations in there. Amazing guests, amazing hosts. I recommend that. Highly, highly recommend that. Something that I watch at least once a month on the internet is a one-woman show that Elaine Stritch did called Elaine Stritch at Liberty. And it was filmed on the West End and it's available to watch on YouTube. And it's not particularly in any way about queer politics or queer existence, but there is just this fabulous energy to it that I think is the basis of fabulous drag. So that's something that I return to all of the time, absolutely all the time. And then another thing that I watch all the time, which again, just really centers me and reminds me about all of the things we've been talking about today, is Royal Variety Performance. I believe it's 2007. I might have that wrong. Paul O'Grady, Cilla Black, Barbara Windsor doing Gotta Have a Gimmick at the Royal Variety Performance, also on YouTube. Spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. And then finally, Ginger Johnson's Show Pony.
Which we will put in the show notes.
Thank you. That's my new show that goes on tour towards the end of the year, which is really a love letter to the little show pony that has lived inside me since I was a little queer boy and now is running rampant around the world.
One thing you didn't know about me is I used to show ponies as a child. And
oh, really?
Also, that's a whole other story. We'll finish the conversation there and let's talk about that off air. Ginger, thanks so much for joining me today. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation. And it's been great. I've learned a lot. Thanks very much. And to everyone listening, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please do make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of Proudly in Conversation. We would also love to hear your thoughts or questions about today's conversation. You can drop us an email via the link in our bio. I'm Simon Blake. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to bring you more conversations like this. Until next time.
LGBTQ plus you plus me, we're